Now, the London police released figures today to show they've now arrested nearly 2,000 people and charged over 1,100 in connection with the riots. Now, part of David Cameron's cure for the so-called broken society is his national service for the 21st century. He says he wants the National Citizen Service, as it's called, to be available to every teenager. But can it possibly attract young people so profoundly disaffected? Stephen Smith, who's been reporting on Mr Cameron's big society for us, had exclusive access to key stages of the scheme.
Citizen Smith, what have you done today to make you feel proud?
Picking up a broom. It's been the craze of the summer. But you know what? We were there first. Like a German holidaymaker's towel on the sunbed of history.
We must all stick together, birds of a feather, and the clouds will soon roll by. We must all stick together, and the clouds will soon roll by.
Keep going. Push, push, push. Push. Yeah.
God, Delia.
Conspicuously, this isn't Downing Street or the Houses of Parliament. But this wind-blown rock in the Lake District could become a landmark in British politics. This is one of the places where, ministers hope, youngsters can be encouraged to scale the heights in their careers and their communities, and to take a different route from young people of a similar age who were involved in riots earlier this month.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we've just done climbing, okay, and what I want you to do now is I want you to think about what happened when we were walking up here, maybe while you were climbing.
I think the hardest thing for me was that hill. It's big and it's long. It's very steep. That hill on camera.
This group, all aged 16 and from South London, are on a week's outward bound trip as part of David Cameron's National Citizen Service.
You're meeting like strangers, and basically you're gonna have to trust them. Like what we just did is all about trust and teamwork.
It's like prison?
Yeah.
In what way?
The bunk beds, there's no signal. You don't get no signal on your phone.
I hate that.
Do you good, some people would say.
Yeah.
Bit of a change.
Yeah, I know, but it's still boring.
I love that.
I can't work it out whether you're enjoying this or not.
Oh no, I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it.
At the other end of the country, this is the outskirts of Croydon, where some of those youngsters come from. This supermarket was burnt out in the riots. It's not far from this bee-loud corner of southern England. This is where another group of future national citizens who've already been through the outward bound phase of the scheme are hoping to do something to benefit locals.
This is the site we want to build our community food learning centre on. Now you've got work to do, so bags off over there.
They want to help Evelyn here, who's passionate about food, to establish a kitchen and allotments on this site. Though it must be said, Evelyn's doing most of the work today. The youngsters help out with the food tasting, though.
Are you lot? Try this one. That one's nice. That one is nice.
Evelyn, can you seriously fight rioting with quiche?
Well, a lot of them join a gang to keep safe, to get self-esteem, and to do something, because there's nothing to do. Now, if you give them something really positive to do, and they can actually stay at it long enough, you know, it's not just going away and doing some abseiling, it's not just going away and doing some camping or something. It's great, it's a treat, but they've got to go home. What to? So I want something, a few more buildings around, where there is something really creative going on that they can become part of, bring their mates, and say, hands off, we've helped build that, no mucking about.
Do you think this kind of thing stops people rioting?
Yeah, definitely. I think because it gets people off the streets and stuff, and it gives them something to do.
What about the kind of hard case guys who were out doing the rioting here last week? Is this going to be somewhere they'll just laugh at, or do you think even they could get involved, some of them?
No, you never know. Some of the rioters were probably just average Joe's, your next door neighbour, so they'll probably get involved anyway.
I don't care where you...
But others say setting up and running a kitchen here isn't going to be a walk in the park.
Use volunteers. It's a great tradition, and as Labour councillor, it's part of the cooperative tradition of working together. So that's fantastic, but they need support, they need help and assistance, and that's what the big society is not delivering to an area like this.
Indeed, quiche doesn't grow on trees. That's why the teenagers are singing for their supper, or rather, pitching for some funding at this version of TV's Dragon's Den. The stakes are modest, but the energy isn't. Even old Duncan Bannatyne might get his chequebook out for this lot. Or maybe not.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good Food Matters was a dream, a vision that Evelyn Findlay possessed for a very long time. She wanted to create a place for disadvantaged young people who didn't have the chance to learn about new foods, lead healthy lifestyles.
To raise money for Good Food Matters, you'll be taking part in the triathlon, which consists of 3 activities: running, swimming and cycling.
They need to just think quite realistically about how many hours they really can actually commit to this.
The Dragons, who include representatives of a local council and a high street bank, decide to give the group the £30 or so thereafter as seed money for their fundraising. So what do they think about the scheme? And the riots come to that.
You don't need to go out and start burning shops and taking things because there's nothing else to do. That's just a short-term gain, long-term loss, because some of those shops won't open again.
My friends, they would encourage me to do this, like, if I wasn't in this challenge, probably, because my friends are just, they were all out there doing it while I was here. So I'll just be in with them. That's just how I am.
Oh my God! I would be cold again.
Back in the Lake District, some whitewater team building for the South Londoners we met on the Outward Bound week of their National Citizen course. This is known as gorging, and there isn't so much as a McDonald's in sight.
So how useful is the National Citizen Service? With us now is Tim Lawton, the Children's Minister, who's in the studio in Brighton, and Peter Kyle from the Association of Chief Executives of Voluntary Organisations. Minister, what's the theory?
Well, this is a really big idea. It's really transformational. It's about valuing, engaging young people, giving them a stake in society, but also challenging them as well. But it's a personal social development programme. It's about getting them volunteering, but it's also about rites of passage. It's about a transition to adulthood, because that's something you do really badly in this country, and National Citizen Service is a way of recognising the great contribution that young people can make and getting them some respect if they've been through the sort of challenge that National Citizen Service offers.
There's none of it, Peter Kyle, to which you would take exception at a theoretical level.
Any scheme that gets young people out into the community and volunteering is good. The question is whether it's good enough for the challenges we have at the moment. There is an inescapable context that we find ourselves in at the moment, and that's the cuts. Charities, youth charities up and down the country are having their funding slashed. If you look at Swindon, for example, at the moment, Swindon has just cut 100% of its funding to youth voluntary programmes. And secondly, there's an issue about reach of this programme. Is this programme going to get right down to the people who need it the most?
Well, if this programme replaces that which is cut, there's no problem, is there?
Well, there is a problem. You can't... I mean, you have... This scheme is going to cost, according to a committee of MPs, £355 million. That's only if half of eligible children take it up, young people take it up. And on the same hand, you're having that same amount of money cut from voluntary youth services up and down the country. Now, you've got to look at this through the eyes of young people. If you're a young person who's involved already in a youth programme that volunteers perhaps every Thursday or whatever weekly, and they see that scheme cut, and on the other hand, they see another big initiative that lands on the table, they're not going to see it as, oh, that's something from the local services which have disappeared and here's a national programme. They're going to see this as robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Seems a nuts arrangement, Minister.
Well, it's not nuts at all. This is something we've been working on for several years. This is not something that's just come up since the disturbances recently. And this is money that has come from a separate funding stream from the Treasury. It's not part of the education budget, not part of youth funding. And it's money that's going into youth activities.
Sure, but what was wrong with all the projects that you're cutting?
Well, we're not cutting projects. Youth projects are run by local authorities, and there's a mixed picture of where they're cutting back in certain areas. What I'm trying to do from a national perspective is to bring youth services into the 21st century, because they're very reliant on just slugs of public money at the moment. And I want lots more people from the voluntary sector, from the private sector, as well as from local authorities to get involved in offering youth services. But this is something different. This is something much bigger, and it's certainly very ambitious indeed, because this is also about social mixing. You heard from those kids who've been on the scheme already, and the feedback from it. I've been there, I've been climbing up walls, I've been climbing up trees with some of these kids. It's really challenging, and the feedback is positive, very positive. And as they said, they are meeting people they would never have met. They would never cross the road to meet. These are people from all different walks of life.
Actually, because to say that you need something new when actually we have youth services out there that have been running for generations, that have enormous amounts of inherited institutional memory about how to work with youngsters.
And we're tapping into
and to really get down deep. Now, this is not a compulsory scheme. This is a nationwide scheme. So the big issue facing our society at the moment, particularly highlighted by recent events, is how you get to the most dysfunctional, the hardest to reach.
And that's exactly what this is all about.
Exactly, but if it is voluntary and you can choose not to take part in it, how do you reach those kids?
Because we tapped into all the expertise that are delivering services up and down the country at the start. This isn't just something that the Department for Education and the government's come up with. We are working with with the Prince's Trust, with Fairbridge, with
which you have cut. Local authority services which you have cut. So you're working with all these things that you've taken money away from. Can you tell us, the point was, how you engage children or young people if it's voluntary?
By working with the experts, because part of the tendering, this is being delivered not by central government, this is being delivered by all sorts of youth services who have an enormous expertise working with particularly challenging children already. So we've got Catch-22, with a great deal of expertise working with kids in the youth justice system or who are homeless, are delivering parts of the National Citizen Service, working alongside Young Devon or Connections in different parts of the country, mixing up kids from different backgrounds. This will be judged not on how many kids from nice middle-class backgrounds go on it, much as though we want them to, but how well we engage with kids with disabilities.
I think what we need to do here is get a sense
backgrounds and from some of the youth justice system and others. Other schemes don't do that.
Well,
this is what it's all about.
You haven't answered the question, Minister. How do you engage those who need to be engaged if the thing is entirely voluntary?
Because this will be such a fantastic scheme, as you're seeing from the feedback with the kids that go on it, that you will be crazy not to want to go on it.
Right.
Well, we consulted with the youth sector, and if you make it compulsory, it puts a completely different complexion on the whole thing. This is something that values young people, and young people should value at the same time. All the feedback is these people are going back to their friends, their siblings, to say, make sure you sign up for your NCS next year.
Does that consort with your own experience here?
There have been so many opportunities for young people for so long. You know, why will they want to do this and they haven't wanted to do other things? We are talking about the people we need to benefit from this scheme are the very hardest to reach. These are people who are on the fringes.
And they are.
Hang on a sec. These people are on the fringes of society. So business as usual is not going to get these people involved.
This isn't business
and we need to put into context the scale of the programme that's being launched today. £355 million to get half of eligible youngsters involved in this, according to a committee of MPs. That is that is the equivalent to all spending from local authorities on youth services for the entire country. So we are talking about an enormous grand scheme, which is nationwide, when really all of the evidence is saying at the moment the problem that we need to get to is very, very focused. Ian Duncan-Smith is launching a raft of new policies, and he is saying it's all about getting down to communities, families, and yes, getting down to individuals. These people won't come out looking for these opportunities. These opportunities need to go looking for them. sometimes they're going to have to knock on a door and they're going to have to start looking at new ways of getting these high-cost individuals out into these schemes. It's going to be tough, and it needs something that's not been done before.
But it's happening.
And I'm afraid
but it's happening, because the people I've been seeing on these schemes who are coming forward, I mean, the Challenge, we're delivering it's a charity delivering about a third of these places. 70% of the people going on the schemes don't engage with the conventional youth services they've got already. The feedback from that is fantastic. 20% of them are kids who qualify for free school meals from disadvantaged backgrounds, from the East End of London, from inner city Birmingham, from Manchester, mixing with kids from rural areas, from kids from independent schools who they wouldn't otherwise come across, being thrown in at the deep end, working on teamwork in a common cause. They are loving it. They're being challenged. They're getting a lot out of it, and the country is going to get a lot out of it. This really is transformational.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, the toppling of Colonel Gaddafi has been presented as the first step in a transition